Dollar drops most in 2 months as yen rally on pushback. China's defense minister Li Shangfu disappeared for 2 weeks, raising public concern. China-linked company is poised to receive over $1 billion in taxpayer money and benefits. China sees the UK as NATO's weak underbelly, Conservative MP says. China's wealth gap is at an all-time high, making Commonwealth a dream. It's all covered in today's Understand China. Dollar drops most in 2 months as yen rally on pushback. The US dollar fell by the most in 2 months after China and Japan signaled a willingness to take steps that would bolster their currencies, triggering a sharp jump in the yuan and the yen. The move snapped what had been one of the longest rallies in the dollar in years as the surprisingly strong US economy fueled speculation the Federal Reserve will keep interest rates above those in other countries. Despite September 11's retreat, analysts expect that interest rate gap to continue putting upward pressure on the dollar and cautioned on betting against the currency. Win Thin, global head of currency strategy at Brown Brothers Harriman & Company in New York, said, as long as monetary policy divergences remain, the direction for the dollar will be higher. He added, jawboning and intervention can cause temporary corrections but not any trend changes. Such comments had an immediate impact on that day, however, as traders weighed what steps Japan and China may take that would prevent their currencies from losing further ground. The yen advanced as much as 1.3% against the dollar to 145.91, the most in 2 months, after Bank of Japan Governor Kazuo Ueda aired the possibility of ending the nation's negative interest rate policy, pushing 10-year bond yields there to the highest since 2014. Meanwhile, the Chinese yuan climbed 1.2% in onshore trading as the nation's financial regulators delivered a strong message to speculators against one-sided moves, pulling it away from a 16-year low. Economic data that confirmed improving credit demand and easing deflationary pressures also brightened sentiment toward China's currency. The moves helped to push the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index down over 0.6%, ending an 8-week gain that marked its longest winning streak since the index's inception in 2005. All 16 of the major currencies tracked by Bloomberg gained against the dollar. Still, the dollar gauge remains not far off this year's peaks and the diverging economic outlooks that have driven the currency's rise remain intact. The broad move up in the dollar was fostered by anticipation the Fed will hold interest rates high to prevent another pickup in inflation as the economy defies once gloomy forecasts, with signs of growth sputtering in Asia and Europe, where rates are already lower in major countries. The difference has provided an incentive for speculators to shift cash to the US to capture higher returns. Any short-term moves in the U.S. currency are also at risk of being reversed by Wednesday's release of the Consumer Price Index, which could prompt a reconsideration of where the Fed is headed. Thin said, it's dangerous to be short dollars going into this week's data dump. Even those who are bullish on the yen in the medium term are suggesting caution. UBS Global Wealth Management forecasts that the Japanese currency, now over 146 to the US dollar, will climb toward 142 by year-end, but the firm advised investors to focus on the yen's advance against the euro or the pound for the moment instead of the dollar, citing potential volatility in the U.S. currency because of the inflation data and the September 20 Fed decision. In a report on September 11, the firm stated, "We do not advise adding new long yen positions against the dollar right now." For the Chinese yuan, which had been dragged down by a pessimistic economic outlook, the data showing improved demand for credit helped to foster the rebound Monday, while Tiffany Wang, a Hong Kong-based strategist at J.P. Morgan Chase & Company, sees room for the yuan to appreciate further against the dollar, in part due to the covering of short positions. She said in a note to clients that the bar for a trend reversal looks high. That would likely require a sustained influx of foreign cash again, which has yet to happen. Baipan Rai, CIBC's global head of foreign exchange strategy in Toronto, added that China's reported steps to tighten capital controls ultimately isn't going to drive sustained push lower for the dollar. China's defense minister Li Shangfu disappeared for 2 weeks, raising public concern. After the questionable disappearance of China's foreign minister Qin Gang, Rocket Force Commander Li Yuchao and others. Defense Minister Li Shangfu also did not show up in public for 2 weeks, sparking public discussion. U.S. Ambassador to Japan Rahm Emanuel posted an openly mocking message in both Japanese and English, saying, "President Xi's cabinet lineup is now resembling Agatha Christie's novel, and then there were none. First, Foreign Minister Qin Gang goes missing, then the rocket force commanders go missing, and now Defense Minister Li Shangfu hasn't been seen in public for 2 weeks." He added, "Who's going to win this unemployment race, China's youth or Xi's cabinet?" He then marked the words #mystery events in Beijing building at the end of the post. When asked about Li's disappearance at a regular press conference on September 11, Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Mao Ning replied, "I don't understand the situation you're talking about." On September 7, there was a sudden rumor on the platform X that Li Shangfu was taken away for investigation on suspicion of corruption and serious disciplinary violations. Li, the latest top official to disappear, last made a public appearance on August 29 when he delivered a keynote speech at the 3rd China-Africa Peace and Security Forum in Beijing. As rumors swirl about Li's whereabouts, she traveled to the country's northeast and called for unity and stability within the military. In June, former Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang disappeared in a strange manner, and a month later Beijing officials announced that he had been removed from his post as foreign minister. Then, on July 31, the CCP Central Military Commission, CMC, announced the promotions of Wang Houbin and Su Shisheng to the rank of general, adding that their positions were commander and political commissar of the Rocket Force, RFA, respectively, indirectly confirming that Admiral Li Yuchao, the former commander of the RFA, who had been missing for several months, and Admiral Su Zhonghua, the political commissar of the RFA, had left their posts.
China-linked company is poised to receive over $1 billion in taxpayer money and benefits. Goshen Inc., a company tied to the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is set to gain more than $1 billion in taxpayer money and incentives for building factories in Michigan and Illinois. Citing public announcements given by the state's governors, Daily Caller reported that Goshen Inc. plans to construct 2 electric battery plants in Michigan and 1 in Illinois, securing commitments in funding and benefits totaling over $1.25 billion. According to a Foreign Agents Registration Act filing, the company is based in California, but it is wholly owned and controlled by CCP-connected Goshen High-Tech Power Energy Co., which is based in China. According to an announcement by Democratic Illinois Gov. J.B. Pritzker and the company on September 8, Goshen Inc. will build an electric vehicle battery gigafactory in Illinois that will commence production in 2024. The announcement reads, Goshen's total incentive package from the state of Illinois is valued at $536 million. It adds, Goshen is eligible to receive tax benefits totaling $213 million over 30 years. It continues, the Reimagining Energy and Vehicles agreement specifies a minimum company investment of $1.9 billion and the creation of 2,600 full-time jobs that are paid at least 120% of the average wage of similar job classifications in Kankakee County. Goshen Inc. received commitments for $175 million in grants and $540 million in tax breaks from Michigan, totaling $715 million. Democratic Michigan Gov. Gretchen Whitmer announced in October, the state committed the benefits to Goshen Inc. building 2 electric vehicle battery factories in Big Rapids, investing $2.36 billion and generating 2,350 jobs. President Joe Biden's Committee on Foreign Investment approved Goshen Inc. Its Michigan project in June. Despite intense criticism from local residents, the company also anticipates receiving millions of dollars in tax credits for its battery production due to Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. According to its 2022 ESG report, Goshen High-Tech employs hundreds of CCP members, including its CEO, Li Jin. The report states, Goshen High-Tech founded a CCP branch in 2010 that was upgraded to a CCP committee in 2014. It added, the CCP committee subunits are 2 CCP general branches and 11 party branches, currently with 923 CCP members, among which over 50% hold master's degrees or higher. Goshen High-Tech also has corporate bylaws establishing a CCP committee within the company. The bylaws state, the party committee of the company shall perform its duties in accordance with the Constitution of the Communist Party of China and other party regulations.
China sees the UK as NATO's weak underbelly, Conservative MP says. According to The Guardian on September 11, a parliamentary researcher arrested on suspicion of spying for China has insisted he is completely innocent. The man said he had spent his career highlighting the challenge and threats presented by the Chinese Communist Party. The arrest under the Official Secrets Act led to Rishi Sunak confronting the Chinese Premier, Li Shangfu, at the G20 summit on September 10 over what he described as an unacceptable interference in democracy. The suspected case is still under investigation. However, the Prime Minister is facing growing anger among ministers over the government's refusal to label China as a threat to UK security despite the arrest of the researcher. Sources confirmed that the Home Secretary, Sala Braverman, wanted China to be designated as an official threat to Britain's safety and interests. Downing Street and the Foreign Office, FCDO, have been accused by two other ministers of having a head-in-the-sand attitude after failing to inform Tory MPs about the spying claims or seeking to explain the government's wider strategy towards China. One minister said, "What I find curious is why we keep giving China a get-out-of-jail-free card. How on earth can we consider it a challenge and not a threat? We need a coordinated cross-government, cross-Whitehall strategy which recognizes that China is willing to break all the usual rules of engagement to get what it wants. Instead, there is very little engagement with ministers or MPs from Number 10 or the FCDO. It is a head-in-the-sand attitude which allows China to do what it wants. There is a whole world of politics taking place, whether that is on an international level or now in the UK, and we are standing by the sidelines deciding what to do." The minister said potential threats needed to be re-evaluated, but this was not happening. "We are dealing with a country that has long deployed economic coercion and espionage to get what it wants. China has a long-term strategy based on its needs. When are we going to do the same?" Another minister said, "The PM must act, and soon, because MPs are deeply unhappy with how we are dealing with this." In an opinion article published in the Daily Express, Conservative Member of Parliament Ian Duncan Smith said, "The news on Sunday that the authorities had arrested a spy who had been operating in Parliament came as quite a shock." Smith commented, "It appears that this wasn't just some young man, already employed in Parliament who happened to do this because he was persuaded. No, this individual was already recruited by the CCP and who was sent to spy and divide those who campaign against the brutal regime of China." Smith raised two key questions. First, when did the Foreign Secretary know, and was that before his visit to China? Second, what access did this operative get to sensitive papers in the Foreign Affairs Select Committee? Smith then highlighted the weak official policy of the UK government towards China, pointing out that China sees UK now as the soft underbelly of the NATO alliance. He concluded that the reality of a Chinese spy in Parliament is a moment to think again about the UK's policy. China's wealth gap is at an all-time high, making Commonwealth a dream. China's income gap has grown to the widest it has ever been since records began, as the average household income of the top 20% in urban areas reaches 6.3 times of the lowest 20%. As reported by Nikkei Asia, those in the service industries, including restaurants, hotels and entertainment, had lost their jobs or had their salaries cut during President Xi Jinping's zero-COVID policy over the last 3 years. Their salaries have yet to catch up since the policy was lifted in January this year. On the other hand, the urban rich with large financial assets continued to thrive during this time. In the face of travel restrictions and lockdowns, they spent less as their savings accumulated and as those assets grew on the back of rising interest rates. Despite the lifting of COVID restrictions, the pace of economic recovery and income growth this year has been slow, while local governments face huge financial burdens as they try to support those who are struggling. One of Xi's political slogans is "Common Prosperity," which places high priority on a fair income distribution. This now seems like a distant goal, given the economic malaise China faces amid a beleaguered property market. The income gap in urban areas has worsened since 2015, when the top 20% earned 5.3 times more than the bottom 20%, according to the National Bureau of Statistics of China, which started tracking such figures in 1985. The disparity in rural areas grew to a 4-year high of 9.2 times in 2022. Data showed that income growth among the top 20% earners in urban areas grew at a faster pace of 4.5% in 2022 from the previous year, compared with just 1.3% among the bottom 20%. During the year, COVID restrictions were ramped up to contain the spread of infections, particularly in big cities. Shanghai, for example, was locked down over a few periods, worsening the employment picture. The unemployment rate in 31 big cities, such as provincial capitals, reached 6% in 2022, higher than an overall average of 5.6%. Those in the service industry tend to form a larger workforce in big cities, and this group of workers were among the worst hit by the pandemic. Critics said that if income disparities worsen, the Chinese government will be blamed. Xi's Common Prosperity Initiative is aimed at shoring up the income levels of low and middle-income earners by raising their share of corporate profits and reinforcing the reallocation of wealth through tax and security programs. Yet, there are worries that over-control of private companies by the government to appease the less well-off in society could backfire and further hamper China's economic growth. Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from Understand China, and thank you for tuning in.